Hello and welcome to Lecture 4 of Unit 11. This lecture covers Chapter 14, Section 3. It's Abolition and Women's Rights. This is the last lecture not only of this unit, but of the entire year. So, here we go. Abolition is the movement to end slavery. And when I talked about a movement, I do not mean like going in a car from place to place. I'm talking about a idea or a group of people that are supporting an idea and fighting for change. So abolition or abolitionists are wanting to end slavery. Abolition begins in the 1700s, and by 1804, almost all northern states have abolished slavery. Abolitionists then start pushing for a law to end slavery in the South. Now, there are some things that you have to remember about why the South would not want slavery to be ended. First of all, the South heavily relies on agriculture to make money, and in order to do that, they need slaves. And without those slaves, if you outlaw slavery, they're not going to make nearly as much money. The other thing is, it becomes an issue of, does the state have the right to control this, or does the national government get to say what is best for the state? And the southern states want to have slavery because it'll make them more money, and they want more state rights. Abolitionists went to great lengths to express their opinions. Some spread pamphlets in the South urging slaves to revolt or kill slave owners. And if slave owners, or if people are telling slave owners, if people are telling slaves to kill slave owners, how do you think that's going to make the slave owners feel? Very threatened, scared. I mean, that's not a good thing. Some started newspapers where they could share their thoughts, and other abolitionists started petitions and sent them to Congress. Pro-slavery congressmen tried to stop these petitions from being read in Congress, because if they're read in Congress, they might change people's minds, and they might start a vote, and then slavery might be banned because there's a vote in Congress. President John Quincy Adams ignored the congressmen and read the petitions anyway. Trying to stop the petitions made the pro-slavery congressmen look bad anyway, because what it did is it made them look like they were trying to stop free speech. And if you're trying to stop free speech and you are an elected official, you are probably not going to get reelected if you're perceived to be taking away rights from the people. Abolitionists had public speakers try to get their point across to people, and some of those most famous speakers were former slaves themselves. Frederick Douglass, who is this guy right here, became a famous speaker. Some at the time said that he could never have been a slave. It was ridiculous to think that he could be a slave and that he was lying about his past, because he was a brilliant speaker, he was intelligent, he spoke well, and all this kind of stuff. But he proved them wrong by writing an autobiography detailing all of his experiences about being on a plantation, where he came from, all this kind of stuff. Writing this autobiography basically is saying, I'm a runaway slave, this is where I've been, this is what I'm doing, and he's a famous person, so people know where he's at. So he kind of gets a little scared that he's going to get recaptured and sold into slavery again. And so instead of just staying in the United States, he actually leaves for 2 years and goes overseas to Britain and Europe and tours those countries and that continent to talk about abolition and all this kind of stuff. And he makes money, and then when he comes back, he buys his freedom, so he is legally free. Another person that spoke on abolition side is Sojourner Truth. She was a former slave who at the age of 30 fled her owners and became a public speaker. She changed her name to reflect her mission. Sojourn means to temporarily or stay temporarily in one place, and then she wants to declare the truth about slavery. So Sojourner Truth. So she wants to stay in one place temporarily, go from place to place, moving and declaring the truth all over about the horrible things about slavery. The Underground Railroad. I'm sure a lot of you know about the Underground Railroad, or at least heard of the Underground Railroad. The Underground Railroad is neither, just to clear this up, is neither underground, nor is it a railroad. It is actually a series of above-ground escape routes through the South to the free North. Escaped slaves would travel by night and then hide at stations during the day, like train stations, railroad, get it? Stations could be attics, stables, or cellars that belonged to abolitionists or people that supported slaves running away and all this kind of stuff. What would happen most likely is slaves would meet in a general area, and then someone would lead them to each one of these stations, and then they would go to the next station, and that person would lead them there until they got to the North. People who led runaway slaves to freedom and from station to station were called conductors, like train conductors, Underground Railroad station. It's all coming together. The most famous conductor was Harriet Tubman. Tubman escaped slavery in 1849, and after her escape, she made 19 more trips back and forth to help free slaves. One trip is hard enough. Doing 19 of those trips is remarkable. At one point, there is a $40,000 reward for her capture, and she never gets captured. She never loses a person on any of her trips, so she is the most famous conductor for those reasons. Some escapes became famous. In 1848, Ellen Craft disguised herself as a white man while her husband pretended to be her slave. They traveled 1,000 miles to freedom on steamboats, trains, and all this kind of stuff. All the time she was disguised as a man, and he was her slave. Henry Brown had a carpenter pack him in a box and ship him to Philadelphia. And after 27 miserable hours, Box Brown, as he becomes known because he was in a box, get it, climbed out a free man in Philadelphia. This is a picture of a political cartoon about him going to the North, and then this is actually a replica of the box. This kid right here, he's a kid, so just imagine like a full-grown man trying to fit into this little box for 27 hours. Not comfortable at all. So now we're moving on from abolitionists to women's rights. Some abolitionists were women, but these women who were fighting for African-American rights themselves had few rights. At the time, many women could not vote, serve on juries, speak publicly, or hold office, and many of the laws treated women like children, with their husbands controlling basically everything. Sometimes if a woman had a job and she was making money, that money would not go directly to her, it would just go directly to her husband. So she's really not even getting paid. So she's not getting paid, she can't own property, she can't vote, she can't hold public office. So basically it's like she is enslaved, but without the physical constraints of being enslaved. You don't have to work in the fields, you don't get beat. It's not nearly as bad as being an African-American slave, but you have similar lack of rights for women at this time. Lucretia Mott and Elizabeth Cady Stanton were abolitionists who decided that it was time to stand up for their rights as well as women. They planned a convention in Seneca Falls, New York, and the Seneca Falls Convention was the first convention on women's rights. They stated their ideas in a document called the Declaration of Sentiments and Resolutions. They based this document on the Declaration of Independence, and the Declaration of Independence starts out, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. This Declaration of Sentiments and Resolutions starts out, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal, so that includes women. This document lists several statements of opinion or resolutions, and that also demanded, and also it included a demand of rights, including suffrage. So suffrage is one of those rights, and that is the right to vote. So suffrage equals voting. Okay. The women's rights movement was ridiculed or not taken seriously by many people, but began to see results. Susan B. Anthony called for equal rights and the right to vote for women. She said that there never will be complete equality until women themselves help make the laws and elect lawmakers. That's basically saying that if half of the population is women and they are unable to vote, that means half the population is not able to voice their opinion, have a say in the laws, and therefore they are in no way equal to the people who are voting. So some progress was made. By 1865, 29 states had passed laws that passed equal pay and property rights laws. This is Susan B. Anthony. This is the Susan B. Anthony dollar. You might have seen that somewhere before. A changing nation. In the early and mid-19th centuries, America experienced dramatic social and cultural change. A growth in technology changed the way people lived and communicated. Factories, industrial revolution, Morse code, telegraph, steam engine, steam locomotive, the steamboat. All of these things changed the way that people live and communicated. Immigration produced a far more diverse population, and cities were dramatically changed in size, culture, and economy. Women began to fight for their rights, which is going to lead to a lot of changes in the ways people think. And while all of this is going on, the issue of slavery continued to tear the nation apart. So all of those things together change American society, and that's kind of what we're all looking at in Unit 11. And this is a picture of a duck. And you have just realized that all ducks are actually wearing dog masks. Yes, take it in. It's true. Alright, so that's the last lecture of this unit and the year. Hope you enjoyed it.